Hey guys, this is Rez, and today we're gonna talk about Tic Tac Toe, or in short, actually, starting out a project. So, as a newbie, you'll notice that it's always hard to think how I should start a project, where should I do what, oh, if this happens, or you start thinking too much and then you get lost in your thoughts and you actually never start anything. And this is a big issue, and it happens to pretty much everyone, at least at the beginning. So, I want to kind of do this project with you guys called Tic Tac Toe. And we're going to do it in console just to keep it simple and easy as we're going on, and eventually we'll do it in the GUI version. But I want to show you how I proceed step by step to figure out what it should be there. Okay, obviously there's other ways of doing this. I'm just doing it in an easy way that just comes intuitively. At least I hope it does. So I created a project and I'm here with the hello world default value, whatever, and if we run it you'll see a hello world, etc. Notice this is what's it called? C#. It's in console version. So the first thing you guys should do is to figure out what is there inside the game Tic Tac Toe. So I just Googled Tic Tac Toe, and the first thing I get is even the Google's game coming up, and you notice a bunch of things. Well, there's two players. There's X and O. There's a board where you could click somewhere and the first player gets to play, then the second player gets to play, and eventually someone will win and someone will lose, right? So in this case I lost. Now so knowing all the rules, okay, if you don't know all the rules, go into it because knowing the rules helps you out. We want to recreate this. Well, the first thing the first thing we need actually is to have a board. If we don't have a board, how do we play, right? So if we look at this, we kind of could recreate this inside of text somehow. You could think of it multiple ways. I could add a space, lines, and etc, etc. I'm going to do it a simple way, in my opinion, is I see this is a grid, right? A 3x3 grid. So there's 3 lines with a bunch of spacing and a bunch of lines to separate them. And X O's goes everywhere, right? So if I put X here, he puts O's, and then if I put let's see, if I put X here, he's gonna put an O there, and if I put 1 here, it gets pretty straightforward, right? So first thing we're gonna need to do is recreate this board. So we're just gonna go back here. Simple thing we know is console right line, so that's 1 line, and we know that we need 3. So we're just gonna go and draw 3 lines, right? So maybe a little line here. This is a pipeline. It's right on the top of your enter key. A little X here. O. And maybe this part doesn't have any value, so I'm going to just 1 extra space. And then we get a O and another space and close. Okay, so that's 1 line. So let's copy this 3 times. And maybe change over here to a X. And remove this X. And probably remove this O. And this looks nice just inside our little platform here. And then obviously if we run it, we'll get something that looks nice too. Okay, which is nice. Now that we have our board, okay, well, a kind of what's gonna soon to look like, we could start creating the real board. So to create this this variable or this board, you got to notice a couple things. Well, it's gonna take either an X or an O as value, right? So we know for a fact it's going to be a character. Then we notice that there's a bunch of values at different spots in there. Well, if you remember, if a bunch of values you want to put it into one variable, it's the moment you use an array. But in this case, the array goes left to right and up to down. So it's a 2-dimensional array, right? Now, if you go and look up 2-dimensional array, this is something that is a 2-dimensional array. So when you create this 2-dimensional array and you say, hey, give me the value at row 3 and column 4, you get that, right? So if you think about it, give me the value at location 1, so row 1, so 0, 1, this is row 1, and column 1, so 0, 1 would give you here. So put in the value here. Okay? So doing this, we got our board. So first thing we're gonna do is create ourselves a little 2-dimensional array of characters. So characters This is creating 2 dimensions. We're going to call it our board. Call it something meaningful. New character array again. What's going to be the size? Well, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's a 3 by 3 dimensions. And this should be it. Okay. Now, currently the default value for character is emptiness. There's nothing there. So we're going to say, well, in 2 locations, so let's say this location and this location, we're going to add a X and a O, right? Just to have something on our board, so when we display it, we could see what's going on. So this location is going to be row 0, column 0. So row 0, column 0 equals, we're going to say an X, a capital X. Just be consistent. And then we're going to say, well, I want also the last spot here to be O, just to show our board as we're typing it. So again, we count 0, 1, 2, so row 2, column 0, 1, 2, so 2, 2. And over here, I'm going to add a O just for the fun of it. Okay, so now an easy way of doing this is just to modify this and say, well, over here, we're going to concatenate a string. So close off the string here with the space, plus board at location 0, 0, concatenate it with the rest, and we get something there. And if we do it here too, so concatenate it with board at location 2, 2. Obviously the other locations don't have anything, so it's going to be hard. And then we get our board. So if we run this, we should still see an X and an O at the corners. And you could see it, the first location here is equal to an X, space, nothing there, O, this is here. Next line, space, X, 0, space, space, X, 0. And then X, emptiness, and the board 2, 2, which is 0. Or the O, whatever you want to say. So, we kind of could go this way. However, you'll notice there's something, it's going to be weird typing in all of this. Well, weird or not, if it works for you, do it, guys. There's nothing that hurts. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace this, and I'm going to notice something. Well, first of all, we're doing 3 things. Well, we're doing a couple repetitions, right? The moment you repeat or you redo something multiple times, this is the moment you know you need to use a loop, right? So I noticed that the rows, I do it 3 times. All right, so I'm going to create a for loop, and I'm going to say this is my rows, and I'm doing it 3 times, right? So there's 3 rows. I go through it every time, 0, 1, and 2, right? And for each row, I have 3 columns. So for each row that I draw or write, I need to draw 3 columns worth of values. So again, I go here and I write column, and again, it's another 3 columns, and then we got our rows, and for each row, we got 3 columns. Right? So if we just do console dot write line, and let's say we actually take this line, okay? So we kind of see something. And you know what? I'm going to delete this, but this is also good. If you guys are still not there where for loops make sense, just fill up your board with concatenation of strings together, all right? So at every location that should be a value, just put in board at that location. So let's run this up and see how it goes. Aha, now we have an issue. Well, I have it looks nice. It's basically this. However, there's actually 9 of them. Why is there 9 and not only 3? Well, because for each row, we're actually drawing 3 times the columns, right? So 3 times 3, we get 9. And for each one of those columns, we're actually writing a whole line saying this is this. So we don't want that. And again, we're going step by step, right? We don't have to rush anything. We don't have to overthink anything. Run this again. See what's the difference. So this was our previous. This is our new one. So now, the difference is this was line by line 9 times. However, this is 9 times, but all in one line, which is, again, it's probably even worse. So what we want to do is after every row, go to the next line. So this is my rows, and this is a column for each row, right? So after my column or value is done, console dot write line, go to the next line. Right? Let's try it out. If it doesn't work, we'll change it again. And now if you notice, we got something much prettier. But we wrote that whole line 3 times, right? But we got our, let's say, if you look over here, actually, let me close off some of these windows. This looks way closer to what we want. At every column, we're actually writing this whole thing every time. So this is 1, 2, 3. That's 3 columns. Then we hit the right line, go to the next row, and we do it again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now we're getting there. It's basically saying us we don't need this. And we don't need this. So let's run it again, see the difference. Right? Now we're running 3 times, and it doesn't look as messed up. Okay, that looks good. Now, however, the values don't look great. Or actually, let's play around with the columns here. So notice, what is it doing? So notice every time it prints one of my columns, it's doing bar space X space bar. So in the middle, I want to make sure I only get 1 bar. And how will we do this? Well, why not make it so we only print X space bar, and then it'll print X space bar, or actually here. So again, this is trial and error. We're not learning too much. We're gonna put a space, and let's run it again, see how it goes. Oh, now it looks much better, right? Except now we're missing the bar in the front. So if you remember correctly, this is the start of our row. This is a column in our row. And the only thing we need to say, this is a column in our row, and this is back to the same row. So all we got to do is say, well, before you give the column values, we're going to say console.write, add me a bar with a space. Right? So the same row, and this is 3 times repeating in the middle, and then go to the next line. So let's run this. So look here. So the first line in our row, it says add a bar with a space. Then we go inside our new loop. Inside the new loop, it says add an X with a space, and then a bar and a space. And then we're here right now. Then it goes back to the loop again because it's 3 times. Adds an X, space, bar, space. Okay, then goes back in the loop again. Adds an X, space, bar, space. And the extra space doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because the user won't see it, and it's fine for our case. Okay, so now I got this. We need to replace this X value. Rather than X value, I want it to be whatever the value is on my board. Because this is going to be changing, right? Variables change. You can't just have a constant value like this. It doesn't make sense. So if we go look here, inside my 2D array, if I want to get a value at a specific location, all I got to do is say where that location is, right? Rows at 3 and columns at 4. So we go down 0, 1, 2, 3, and we go right 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We get here. So this is the same as saying, well, this location, let's say it's at 0, 1 row, column 0, 1, 2. Okay? So we could do that too here. Rather than the X, we're going to delete the X. And I'm just going to go right before console.write. So you see the separation. I'm going to write board at my row, comma, my column. And that's it. And let's see what happens. Alright. So, if you notice, our X is at the correct position, 0, 0. And our 2 is at the correct position, 2. However, there's like this messed up lining. Well, what's going on here? If I put my mouse over it, I have 1, 2 spaces. Well, there should be 3. And this is dependent on your language, but here the problem is that the initial value to this is null, or not. It's not an empty space, right? So we could either set the default for every location to nothing. I think there might be some easier way to give the whole board a default value. Let's see. If I do something like this, would that work? I don't remember. I have multiple languages I worked on. No, because this is saying you need to initialize all the locations in there. So we create a new character array. I guess we'll have to go initialize every location. So let's do that. For rows into my array, right? Same thing. For columns into my array, again 3 spaces. I want that board at that location, row and column, to equal empty space, right? So it's gonna be all empty space, and then after that we make 0 0 x 2 2 0. Okay, so here I am initializing board, and here I am printing board, right? So let's just run this and look at the difference. So this time we got normal spacing, because at every variable location there is a character to put. Before, at every variable location you could have a character like this, or it was nothing there. So now let's go back here. So the first thing I'm noticing is print board is done, and all it does is printing. So I know that this is not going to affect anything else, and I don't need it to do anything extra. And you'll notice that this part is also initializing the board. Doesn't need to be extra. I'm going to try and keep my main as clean as possible. Why? Because when I come back to this later on, and I need to add some new features or fix some bugs, I have to read all of this. Okay, and it's not so bad right now that we want to make a lot of modification, but let's make it a bit more readable. So knowing that this part is just for printing and nothing else, I could make it into its own little function. So getting outside my main function, notice the curly braces. At the end of this curly brace, because it belongs to my main, I'm going to put some space. Notice I'm still within my class, within my object, main class. Notice I'm still within my namespace, right? Just right after my main function. This is my main function. Right after, I'm going to say static void print, right? And I'm going to give it what? Well, nothing so far. Let's just go. So this is a normal function print. And I'm going to go grab all of this and put it in here. Now you get an error saying, well, board doesn't exist in this scope. So this is a different country, and this one is another country, and you're saying, hey, use the same board, or use the same, what would be a good example that a country has and the other one doesn't? So let's say in Canada we have poutine, right? They created a poutine which is called this. And in USA, we're trying to add onto the poutine or display what the poutine looks like, but we don't have a poutine, right? So getting back here, we got to give from Canada, or in this case our main, we got to give our poutine to the print function. Okay, so all we got to do is say, well, we have a character array called board, right? So this is a parameter to our function. We're passing it that board, right? And then we just have to do print board, and that's it. So we're saying, hey, print function, here's my board, you do with it what you need, and then we'll move on. Now let's just see that everything works. Everything still works. And notice one thing though, I keep mentioning this, and people as newbies, you forget, is the program only runs the main function, right? It's something that's always there, it's static, it's waiting for the computer to run it. The computer will run this until it reaches here. So if you don't call the print, you see this is, we're calling our print board, right? Call. If we don't call it, this part of the code will never run ever. This is the neat part about it. But because we made it into a function, we could actually call it multiple times. We could say, oh, print again my board, right? We could print it again. So now we have 1 2 3 6, right? So if we run it, you'll notice that there's actually 6 boards being printed, which is nice because otherwise, if I wanted to print 6 times, I would have needed to repeat this loop 6 times, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines compared to our 1 line. So this is a great thing about functions. You know, it makes an action that's always constant or always kind of the same to be run easily and cleanly. And the best part is I'm just mentioning a variable that changes. So the variable that being changed, I still give it, and it understands that that variable is changed. So it's like a car wash. A car wash would always get a car, a different car, but it would still do the same functionality, which is to wash it, right? So now that I got my printing working, we could even make this initialize into a new function. So we go here, static void initialize my board, right? So I'm going to pass in my board. And I'm just going to come here and cut it and put it inside my function. And I'm going to just write initialize board. Now, we don't need this comment anymore because the function itself, if you notice, my comment is the same as my function and the parameter I passed into it, right? So we don't need the comment because it's intuitive enough to read it that it makes sense. And over here, print, I'm just going to delete all of those other prints. And if you notice the comment, again, printing board, there's no point of it because it already says print board, right? Naming really matters, makes your life easier. Now, if we forget about everything else, so moving this off the screen just so we could concentrate a bit. Noting this, looking at what we have in our main. So this is when our application runs. Application creates a board, 3x3. It initializes the board to spaces, right? Then we get 2 values. Let's say the player played and the other player played. And then he prints the board, right? Super easy to read. 4 or 5 lines to read. This is what you're trying to aim for. Okay, so now that we got our board, let's just check it out. So we got our board, and our board could change depending on the user. Let's start getting the user's value this time. So let's say the user presses in the middle, right? So if the user presses here, he's basically giving you 0, 1, the row 1, and 0, 1, the height 1, or the column 1. So we're going to go back in our code, and we're going to say, well, here, we're going to say, actually, let's leave those 2 board answers right after those. We're going to go say console.write, please enter row, all right? So the user will enter the row there. And we'll also need to do, actually, well, let's grab the row first. So integer row equals, how do we get the user's value? We say console again, read the line, and you'll get an error saying, well, read line gives you back a string, but you're trying to make it into an int. Let's use the easiest way we know, convert to integer 32 the string. So here we're just doing something kind of blindly, because if the user doesn't give us a integer, this convert is gonna blow up, right? But we're gonna assume for now, as we're writing this step by step, he's always gonna give us a good value, so we could have a great value. Okay, and then after we get a value, we're gonna convert it to a integer, and then we're gonna ask for the column, right? Please enter column. And when he gives us a column, we're going to convert it to an integer and put it into this variable column, right? So let's just make sure that this works. And we could say console dot write line, sorry, row equals plus, oops, let's close that, plus concatenation, row plus column, concatenation column thing. So let's run it now. So as our code ran, the user is asked, please enter a row. It's using right, so it's not going to the next line, which makes this cursor nice, right? So we know the user intuitively knows that the row number is going to be right here. So we're going to tell him, well, it's going to be a bit hard because the user doesn't know where he's looking at. So you know what? Let's close this off. First thing we're going to say, well, we're going to print the board for him. Print board, right? How easy is that? So the first thing we do, we print the board and we tell him which row do you want. So let's say if I want to add it here, I do 1 because 0, 1, right? Row 1. And then 0, 1 for columns. And then I added it. However, we don't see it, but we got all the rows correctly. No errors happen. Now the problem is we're not changing the board, right? So after I got, we could delete this line actually. After I got my rows and columns, I want to go modify the same way I did this. Board at location row and column, I want to make it, let's say, X. For now, it doesn't matter what we make it, just for fun. So if we run this, we'll get our board again. It looks nice. There's already 2 values. And then we say, please enter a row. We say 1. Please enter a column. We say 1. And we get our new value inside our board. Sweet, we got something going. Now there's a bunch of problems, but again, we go step by step. So now that I could get values, there's one major issue I want to fix first, is the user, the zeros and 1, 2, 3 and whatnot. So inside an array, inside computers really, everything starts with 0. But that's not really intuitive to the users, because in real life 0 is not a value. 0 is just saying emptiness, nothing there, and so forth, so on. So one way to fix this is to let the user type in 1, 2, 3 and then do -1 on that value. Or another way is to show the row numbers and the column numbers. So I'm going to do that. But how do we show it? Well, let's just go to our print and modify it a bit. So our print prints out every row and then every column, and we get something like this, right? But before the row starts, I want to have zeros, 1 and 2. So if you notice, our row actually mentions which one it is. So all we got to do is say console.write, and we're gonna say row plus that. Maybe add a space here. Okay, and let's run it just to see how it looks like. Cool. Now that I got all my rows, I need to know my columns. So the columns is a one-time thing, and it's going to be at the first part. So it's not even in the repetition. 0, 1, 2, 3. The columns is way before. So right on top here, console.write line. I'm going to create a line that matches this and adds 1, 2, and 3. Right? So we're going to go with trial and error. So the first part, we're going to put some empty. That's for the zeros. Another empty for the space there is. And no more empties. Let's add number. Then we add space 0, 1, 2, and we check how it looks like. So we rerun this, and we get something like this, right? So first print me a line with just 0, 1, 2, just to mentioning which row is what. Notice the extra space I put in there to skip that row numbering thing. And then for each row at the beginning, I would say what row it is, and then print out that column and stuff. So now I know at 1, 1, I would get this location. At 0, 2, I would get this location. So let's do 0, 2, and I get that location, right? So this is nice. Now, there's a problem. So what's the next problem? Looking at here. So, here we could make this into a function, make it into one-liners, but for now we're gonna leave it there. So let's see what happens. I really don't know what I'm doing, right? I'm doing it with you guys, and we're going step by step. So we click here, sorry, we get an X, then the other player plays. So how do we switch which player is playing? Well, again, we're going to do the same thing. But this time, these will need to be a bit dynamic, right? These need to be a variable. A variable is able to change. Specific values like this are not. So at the beginning of our game, the same way we're initializing everything, we're going to say, well, there's a character called player, and his value is going to be starting with X, right? Let's say that's our initial start. This we're going to keep for now. So here, however, actually, you know what? No. So over here, however, I'm going to change it to player. Now, you know what? We could even change it here. And then afterwards, we could say player equals big O. And then we change that to here to player. So you'll notice something's happening here. The values change depending on player. So wherever I place on the board, the variable player will determine what the value is. And the value of player changes after every turn, right? So after every turn, if the player is X, then he becomes O. If the player is O, then he becomes X. So let's do that, right? We just said it loudly, so let's do the same thing. So after the player plays, so the player plays, if player equals capital X, keep it consistent everywhere. The capital X and lowercase x are totally different thing. We want to say player equals O. Else player equals X. Right? So this would change our player. And all we got to do is say, well, let's ask the user for one more and let's see what he says. Right? I'm getting a bit messy here. We should have probably went with a loop first before that. But it's fine. Let's just do it. The local variables already exist. Actually, you know what? Let's skip this step 1 second. I wanna go to the next step before we come back here. Okay, so having the board and the player if statement. Just remember this for a second. Remember one thing. Every time we're doing something, we're adding a new thing, and well, let me restart. So every time is the player X's turn. X plays, then O plays, then X plays, then O plays, then X plays, until there is a winner, right? So there is a loop. We could start it off that loop right away. So we say here, right here. Let's start it here. While, and we're just gonna say true. Okay, we're just gonna keep letting it run forever. For now, we don't care. We're gonna take off this little thing, and we're gonna put it at the end of our whole thing. Right? Not outside our loop again. Not outside our main function. We're just putting everything code-wise that repeats inside our while true. So every time it starts, it prints the board, asks for a row and column, does the player, changes the player, print the board. Okay, so let's just run it, see how it looks. Obviously, there's going to be some issues we're going to fix. So, prints the board, ask for the rows. I say 1, 1, 1. Ha, we got our first issue. It printed the board twice. So if we look, we ask for the row and column and press enter, added the value, change the player, prints the board, goes back in the loop. Is it still true? Yes. Print the board. Oh, we have 2 prints. No need 2 prints. So let's delete one of them. And let's look what it does. So we run this again. I'm going to leave the old one here just for you to see the difference. So again, 1, 1. This time we only get 1 board, which is nice, right? Maybe we want to clear up this whole screen. There's no point of keeping it. So let's remove those. And say right before this, console dot clear me the screen, right? So clear my screen, show me my board, ask the user input, etc., etc. So 1, 1, and then now we got X in, right? So it should be O now. Let's put it at 0 and 2, 0 and 2. Sweet, it's working. Now let's put it, let's say 0, 0. Let's put it 0, 0. Hey, so there's no law right now that says you can't put it somewhere that already exists. Okay, even though inside the game you can't do that. But that's fine for now. I just want you guys to kind of see what's going on here. That we got our whole game going. So let me stop this actually. We got our game going where we initialize stuff. Could actually remove this part now because the user could input values itself. So the game plays until winner, loser, or draw. Right? We didn't do that part yet though. This part is not done. That's why it's a while true. So this is gonna go infinitely. It's never gonna stop. Then inside there we print the board and we clear the board, etc. We ask the user for everything. Well, for the rows and the columns. And we add the user, well, the current player into that location inside of our board, right? It holds values. We switch players. And we continue this again. Okay, so if we want to, we could make this inside functions again, right? So, like, let's say this part. The player is X, then the player should be O. If the player is not X, then the player should be X. So for so on. So right outside my function main, I'm going to create another function. Public, well, no, we don't need that right now. Static void, let's say change player. Or let's say change turn is much better, right? Change turn, we give it the player. So the current player, so this would be current player. And again, we just copy paste that part. And obviously this variable doesn't exist anymore. Place those. And here we could just say return. Okay, let me make sense out of this for you. So here we just need to do a call first before I forget my mind. Change turn. And we're gonna give it the current player. Okay, so what's going on is this part of the code, this part. Well, anywhere that you have a function. That function is gonna get replaced by this code. So this code would actually get replaced. This part would get replaced by this every time you call it. Same word for a print gets replaced by the print function, which is all of this, right? Now, however, this is a bit different. In this function, we give it a player, right? The current player. So let's say it was X. So X goes inside the function change turn. This is X. It would say is if current player, which is X, if current X, or sorry, let's say if X equal X, then return back O to the guy. Else return X. So when we call change turn, we give it a player, and change turn is supposed to give us back a character, not an int. So it gives us back a capital O or capital X. So we say, hey, the new player equals change turn. So every time we played a game, it would tell it, hey, which new player would it be now? Right? I'm just doing this because if we look inside our main function, we're keeping it small, but it's doing the whole game. And again, if it's too messy to look at for you, or you're not used to these functions, use the normal if statement that was there. It's fine if you have 100 lines inside your main. You just want to get it going, right? So, so where were we? So we clear the console, print, get the rows in the column, play that, and switch. So let's just make sure everything works. Again, every step, just keep running it, make sure everything works, keep going. So the board's empty. We play 0, 0. We play 1, 1. We play 2, 2. Notice it's all working fine. Okay, so what's our next step? We could make this into a function as well, but for now it's fine. We play the player plays something, and before we change turn, we should check if we won, right? How do we check if we won? Let's go back here. Let's restart the game. Let's say I get the top here, and then I get here, and then he blocks me. Let's do it a new game. Let's put I put here, then I put then I put here, then I put here, and then notice now if I put an X here, we get we get a diagonal row. We could also, let's make it easy so I could play all the types and I could show it to you. I could also get a row, right? So we could have rows. We could have this row, this row, this row. So there's 3 rows, or columns, 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 or a diagonal. So there's actually 8 ways we could win. So for now, let's check the first row, right? The first row would be this location, 0, 0, 0. This location, row 0, column 1. And this location, row 0, column 2. So we just got to do if my player equals board at 0, 0. And, right, we need all of them to be the same player. Board at 0, 1. And board, sorry, and player equals at board 0, 2. Right? So for now, we're just going to check one row, okay? Just to make sure that our logic makes sense and whatnot. So if it is true, we want to do console dot write line and say player plus concatenation has won the game. Alright, and let's just run it because there's an error and I want you guys to see that errors could pop up. So again, the player needs to be the same on all 3 locations, right? So let me just scroll it down a bit so you guys can see stuff. Okay, and actually could move this here, make this a bit down. Okay, so first place we're gonna say 0, 0. We got our X. Let's say 1, 1 for the O, 0, 1 for the X again, 2, 2 for O's, and O wasn't smart enough. Row goes 0 and then 2 and X wins. However, what happened to our win? Well, it's not showing, even though I wrote has won the game. So we kind of go in there and see what happens. So has won the game. Yes, that made sense. Maybe there's something wrong here, but we're gonna say we're good. Has won the game. Change the turn. Go in the loop again. Console.clear. Oh, it's blocking off my. It's blocking off me from showing this because right away it clears the console, prints again. Remember, the console's, well, the computer itself runs billions of lines faster than you, right? So rather than doing that, I'm going to say console.read a key to make sure that the user acknowledges that he won. So again, we're going to do it again. So 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 2, 2, 0, 2. See, X has won the game. Yay. All right. So, so we know that the win works. However, we need how many if statements? Well, we need that row times 3. Then after that, we need columns times 3. Then we need diagonal times 2. So there's 8 if statements, and that's a lot. And if you notice something, if you didn't play it smart and you didn't use a variable, you'll need to do this 8 statements, 8 times if statements, twice. One for the X and one for the O's. But because we're using the player variable, it changes and it doesn't matter. So whoever turns it is, we check if he made the right decision and won the game. Right? And don't forget the last statement, which is, hey, if there's no more moves available, What does it mean? Well, it means there's a draw. Okay? So let's just create a draw. Actually, let's go impossible. I'm going to put X here. He puts there. I put it, say here. He puts it there. I put it here. He puts it there. I put it here. Puts it there. And I played the last move. And that's the only moment that we get a game over. So to get a draw, we need to kind of figure out, is there any moves left? Well, we could figure that out by, easiest thing is making sure the board is filled. Or in another case would be that we played 9 moves in total. And so forth, so on. So guys, let's do a couple more things and then I'm going to let you guys finish it yourself. So I did one way of winning. And you could just do more if statements and so forth, so on. Now, to end the game, we really need to end this while loop. To end this while loop, the only real way of doing that is with this, well, either adding a variable here. So let's say, let's do a couple of ways. So Boolean game end equals false, right? And we say while game end is false, okay? While the game is still not finished, we want to keep doing this loop. And the moment that the user won, so let's say here, we could just say game end equals true, right? So then the next loop, it will end it because true does not equal to false. So this gets out. And here we could do the celebration for winner. Celebration for winner, right? Celebration as in clear the screen, print the board, mention who won, or if it was a draw, okay? Something like that. We could also do another thing which loops allows you to do, and that's to put a break. So whenever it hits a line called break, notice how the while loop highlights. Basically says this break command is gonna break out of this loop. So the moment it hits this line, this loop will come to an end and automatically would go here. It won't even do the things afterwards. The moment it hits the break, everything after is ignored. So this would be nice too because we could keep it as a true. And we see the game keeps going until this if statement's hit and then it goes breaks, right? In your case, you would have a bunch of different if statements or you would do it a different way. There's a lot of different ways to do this. And it's up to you to figure out which one's the best one. And actually, it's up to you to play with all the different kinds of it. Why? Because if you always stick to a path that you're more comfortable with, you won't notice that there is something better or probably something worse, or why shouldn't you use that, or why should you use this, or you know, all these little things that are not really there until you play with it, right? Let's do one last thing, and that's gonna be figuring out if it's a draw. And to do that, we're just gonna have an integer saying moves played and equal to 0. So at every game, so let's say after every turn, well, after we check if we won, we change the moves, right? So moves played equals moves played plus 1. And we do if moves played equals what? Well, there's 9 moves to be played, so we say 9. And if we didn't find the winner by then it means game over, right? So break, no winners, no nothing, right? Console dot right line draw. Okay, obviously I'm probably missing some stuff. I'm not doing everything, but this is pretty much our whole game. And notice that the moves played is only occurring after I check if someone won, right? So this is basically saying even though I did the last move, if there was a winner, I would check first. Then I would say, well, there was no winner, so it must be a draw. Okay? Anyway, guys, this video was pretty long. Hope you learned something. See you guys next time. Subscribe, like, comment, ask me questions. I'll help you out. And the next time we're probably going to play this we're gonna probably do it inside the GUI version, so we get something out of it. So 0, 0. I'm just gonna play one game quickly. 0, 2. I really don't know what I'm doing. 0, 1. Okay, so 2, 1. Just want to draw. 1, 0. 1, 2. I think I have a draw, so let's make sure the O blocks off 2, 2, and then 2, 0. We get a draw, right? And it ends my program, and everything looks fine. Alright, see you guys next time.